Good evening. I'm Leland Vittert. Today's acquittal closed the criminal case against Kyle Rittenhouse. But what this means for our country, culturally, for gun owners, for the media, for police, for prosecutors, and for you, is just beginning.
When this is state-sanctioned murder, you get to riot.
In case you couldn't hear that, when it's state-sanctioned murder, you get to riot. I would humbly submit it is that mindset that got us here in the first place. So stay tuned this evening. Thankfully, so far, cooler heads have prevailed, and there has not been any violence since the afternoon verdict.
The jury find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
Members of the jury, these your
18-year-old Rittenhouse broke down in relief after 5 not guilty verdicts. The jury in Kenosha, Wisconsin agreed he acted in self-defense when he killed 2 and shot another during the riots last summer. Kyle Rittenhouse is a free man tonight, and there is reason to believe if the prosecutors had looked at the evidence rather than listening to the media narrative, he never would have been charged to begin with. To understand where we are at, let's remember what we were told about Kyle last summer. Here's how Bari Weiss explained it. Here is what I thought true about Kyle Rittenhouse during the last days of August 2020. Based on mainstream media accounts, the 17-year-old was a racist vigilante. I thought he drove across state lines to Kenosha, Wisconsin, with an illegally acquired semi-automatic rifle to a town which he had no connection. I thought he went there because he knew there were Black Lives Matter protesters and he wanted to start a fight. And I thought that by the end of the evening of August 25th, he had done just that, killing 2 peaceful protesters and injuring a 3rd. As the trial proved, and as Bari Weiss pointed out, almost none of that is true. The lie got around the world before the truth could lace up its shoes. Remember this tweet from Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, a 17-year-old white supremacist, domestic terrorist, drove across state lines armed with an AR-15. He shot and killed 2 people who had assembled to affirm the value, dignity, and worth of Black lives. Fix your damn headlines. Well, perhaps she should fix her tweet. In case you are wondering, as of now, there has been no apology or retraction. In fact, Congresswoman Cori Bush just doubled down after the verdict. This is what she said today. The judge, the jury, the defendant, it's white supremacy in action. This system isn't built to hold white supremacists accountable. It's why Black and brown folks are brutalized and put in cages while white supremacist murderers walk free. I'm hurt, I'm angry, I'm heartbroken. As we've discussed before, when the left's narrative breaks down, there's no apology, there's no remorse for ruining a teenager's life. There's just an accusation of racism. Well, here it is from Mayor Bill de Blasio. The verdict is disgusting. It sends a horrible message to this country. Where is the justice in this? We can't let this go. We need stronger laws to stop violent extremism from within our own nation. Now is the time. That is the New York mayor and failed presidential candidate. For all the lunacy coming from the left today, the right couldn't help themselves either. 3 U.S. congressmen offered Kyle Rittenhouse an internship: Matt Gaetz, Madison Cawthorn, and Paul Gosar. Gosar even said he would arm wrestle Gaetz for Kyle. And we are not making this up. This is the tweet. I will arm wrestle Matt Gaetz to get dibs for Kyle as an intern. And then there is Madison Cawthorn, who seems to think bringing an AR-15 to a riot somehow qualifies you for an internship on Capitol Hill.
Kyle Rittenhouse is not guilty, my friends. You have a right to defend yourselves. Be armed, be dangerous, and be moral.
Okay, at least the President of the United States was slightly more sane than anybody. He's back at the White House now from his annual physical at Walter Reed. Here's what he said.
I didn't watch the trial, so I.
Stand by your past comments equating to white supremacy?
Well, look, I stand by what the jury has concluded. The jury system works, and we have to abide by it.
That's pretty similar to what the prosecutor in Kenosha said today. As for Rittenhouse's attorney, he says this case is solely about the few minutes last August when Rittenhouse was cornered by a rioter who grabbed his gun.
I don't represent causes, I represent clients. And the only thing that ended up mattering to me was whether he was found not guilty or not.
We're going to examine the case top to bottom. Tony Katz and Jason Nichols will tell us if America will learn anything from this. Former FBI Assistant Danny Coulson joins us on whether the verdict inspires more to arm themselves. Civil rights attorney Robert Patillo tells us whether the charges in the Ahmaud Arbery case in Georgia are more likely or less to get a conviction. But we start with Philip Turner and Bob Bianchi, both former prosecutors, current defense attorneys. Gentlemen, good to see both of you. I don't think either of you really are surprised by this. Philip, start with you. Was the prosecutor bad, or did he have a bad case?
I think that he had a bad case. And of course, he made it worse, but he had a very bad case. But then again, the prosecutor knew what his case was, or should have known, because he's able to interview all the witnesses in his office for weeks or months, and then he's able to do practice cross-examination with them, and that's what a good trial lawyer does. And you know the weaknesses of your case, and you know what your case is about, and you can take whatever necessary action you think is appropriate to do something. If not dismissal of the charges, changing the charges, or whatever. But the facts were bad.
Yeah, they certainly did seem bad for that. And in the end, this was the deputy prosecutor, Bob, sort of in the last ditch of the closing argument, the rebuttal closing argument, explaining what Kyle Rittenhouse should have done rather than shoot. Take a listen.
Everybody takes a beating sometimes, right? Sometimes you get in a scuffle and maybe you do get hurt a little bit. That doesn't mean you get to start plugging people with your full metal jacket AR-15 rounds, and no, bullets are not bullets.
Isn't the law, though, if you're getting beat up and you think you're going to die and you didn't start the fight, you do get to shoot back?
Death or great bodily harm, Leland. Let me go to the point that you just raised a moment ago with Philip. As a former homicide prosecutor who's really investigated cases and tried them, these charges were brought within days of this incident, before the autopsies, before all the evidence was collected at the crime scene, before all the witnesses were interviewed, before all the videos and photographs came in. We take weeks and sometimes months to dot I's and cross T's to make sure we have a solid case. And so when the defense attorney got up there in summation and said, this was all about politics, they did this because they needed to have a scapegoat, it resonated based on the facts of this particular case. Last point, to Philip's point, did he have a bad case? Did he put on a bad case? He did a lot of bad things with regard to violating court rules, commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. We'll put all of that aside for a moment. There wasn't a legal commentator either on the liberal side or on the conservative side that didn't listen to the state's own case, where 4 witnesses confirmed the self-defense claim, including one of the victims, Grosskreutz, who was the one who had the gun and pointed it at or in the direction of Rittenhouse. We were all in shock as to why it was that this case was moving forward. And that is why the prosecutor then asked for the second-degree lesser-included offenses. Let me give you what that means in code. That means my case is going down in flames, and I want to give the jury a middle ground to go to rather than straight at not guilty, because they knew that's how bad the case was going. The facts just weren't there, and that is the issue. And what's sad, last point, is that it's not about narratives.
No, it's not about narratives. That's why we have trials. It's about the facts. And Phil, we talk about the facts, and we alluded to it. And what Bari Weiss had to say is that there's so many folks and people who have, are intelligent and read the news and everything else, who seem to think that there were so many facts here that didn't matter, that he allegedly crossed state lines, or should a 17-year-old be allowed to have a weapon, on and on and on. How do we explain to folks that two things can be true at once, in the sense that Rittenhouse is not a hero, and he was probably doing things that at the very least were really, really stupid, but at the same time should be acquitted on the charges he faced?
You can't explain that to them, because they have an opinion before they've heard anything. And so there's no way you're going to convince them of anything or show them anything. The facts here were bad. The prosecution knew the facts, and yet they proceeded with this case, which I think is quite scary, because it shows you that there are prosecutors here who will prosecute cases when they know those cases shouldn't be prosecuted. What the prosecutor should have done is taken the heat and said, you know what, we've investigated this case, taken the time to investigate it, and said, there's a substantial question of self-defense, we're not going forward. And there would have been yelling and screaming, but that's what you have to do when you're a prosecutor. You make that kind of tough call, and that's what should have been done here. The case should have never been charged.
Yeah, as you both point out, the media had so much about this, and it really wasn't until that cross-examination of the one person who Rittenhouse shot who survived, who admitted that he pointed his gun at Rittenhouse, that this really blew up in the national media conversation. Here's MSNBC Today as the verdict came in.
If the message that people get out of this is that it's a good idea to come in the middle of civil unrest or protests with a long gun, that's not the right message, and that definitely isn't the best message, and that shouldn't be the message that came out of this trial.
Bob, agree, disagree?
Absolutely disagree. This is not about messaging. This is about whether or not you violated the criminal statutes of the state. That's the problem. We don't have trials so that we can deliver messages unless it's about deterrence and violating the law. The fact here is 12 jurors, after listening to all the evidence, and most legal commentators that are, again, on both sides of the equation that listen to the evidence, knew that this was potentially a not guilty verdict. When we're sitting here trying to say that a person should be convicted, Leland, my rhetorical question back to my friends that say those kind of things. There are trials happening every day throughout the United States of America that you don't see on TV. Is that the standard by which they want their mother, their father, their brother, and sister to be judged by? If they were charged with a crime, they'd be screaming bloody murder if that were happening.
Yeah, no, it's a great point.
Of course they would. Of course they would.
You know, normally when we have these legal panels, you guys disagree with each other. It's telling that over the entire course of this trial, almost every lawyer we've had on has agreed on these points. It's the political commentators that have the other ideas. Philip Turner, Bob Bianchi, great work over the past couple of weeks. Gentlemen, we're smarter for it, and thank you.
Thank you, Leland.
Yeah,
thank you.
Good to see you both.
You thought I was crazy? If you read the statute correctly, he was legal in having that firearm.
That's the defense attorney weighing in on Wisconsin law. If you've listened to any of our competitors today, you'll hear them talking about how this case is spurring a discussion about the Second Amendment and/or self-defense.
Do we see this become a cause for the Second Amendment? Do people feel like they're emboldened in a setting like this to go out and carry guns and perhaps be more aggressive with them?
Again, perhaps this should not be about messaging, but about the facts of the case. Joining us now, 30-year FBI veteran, former Deputy Assistant Director at the FBI, Danny Colson. Good to see you, as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
Should police around the country be worried now that because of the Rittenhouse case, suddenly there's going to be a lot more guys wandering around with AR-15s?
No. I think they should be worried about riots. These politicians that are giving excuses to people because they're saying it was not a valid verdict. It gives people have animus in their mind to go out and riot. I don't think the other issue is even anywhere near that. I don't see this as a justification for lawlessness, except if you want to riot, you want to take on the cops, then maybe these politicians are given justification for that. They need to be quiet. Let the jury verdict stand. Go on, do your messaging however you want to, but don't criticize this verdict. The verdict was righteous by anybody that knows anything about the law, anything about investigations knows. That was a good verdict.
Pardon me for interrupting you, but I just want to point out the video that you're watching in the screen right now is from Kenosha back in August when the shootings occurred, obviously not from tonight, where things have been quiet both in Kenosha and then in Chicago as well. As we were talking about this today, though, there's two sides, right? There's people who are saying, oh, this is going to increase vigilantism and everybody's going to run around now with AR-15s to prove how manly they are. The flip side of that, though, is there a chance that this teaches both politicians and local police chiefs it's better to stop riots before people feel the need to come out with their own weapons and protect themselves?
I certainly hope so. Because, frankly, he might not have been there had the policemen allowed to do their job. Right now, the politicians in some of our cities are backing away and say, go ahead and burn down this business, take the proceeds and the life plans of all these businessmen, many of whom are minorities, and let them go up in smoke. So people get frustrated. And, you know, it's the duty of a society is security, protect us. And if you don't have the guts to protect our society, then get another job. Go become a baker, go become a carpenter or something, but don't try to run a city or a state that's lawless. We don't live in a Mad Max world. That's not where we want to be. We want to be law and order, great policemen, great prosecutors, and not follow this idea of, well, you know, they deserve it, they're going to blow off steam. That doesn't work. It's my business. I'm going to be really angry. And I think the more chances we do this, we need to stop that. We need to have law and order.
We heard from a business owner in Kenosha a couple of days ago. She was near tears, saying that if they burn down my business again, I can't recover. I've got 6 kids, almost pleading with the would-be rioters through Brian Enton, our reporter up there, to not let that happen. Danny, it's always good to see you and your perspective as well. Hopefully we won't have to have you back to talk about any riots, but we'll have you back on other subjects, sir. Good to see you.
Something will happen. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I always enjoy it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
So there was a picture of Kyle Rittenhouse in that video. It's a video that President Biden shared on his Twitter account. Very well may end up being the reason Kyle Rittenhouse sues the administration, or at least the Biden campaign, and the media for defamation. Here's President Biden talking about Rittenhouse shortly after the shooting last year, then candidate Biden.
Allegedly, he's part of a militia coming out of the state of Illinois. Have you ever heard this president say one negative thing about white supremacists? Have you ever heard it?
As we've reported, Kyle Rittenhouse was not part of a militia, certainly not a white supremacist as we know of. It wasn't true then, what the president said, and it's not true now. Saying things that aren't true has consequences. Just ask Nick Sandmann, who successfully sued CNN over their coverage for calling him racist. He wrote this in a Daily Mail column: the parallels between me and Kyle Rittenhouse are impossible not to draw. So if Kyle is prepared to take on another burden in his early life, with the acceptance that it might result in nothing, I answer, give it a shot and hold the media accountable. Joining us now, former prosecutor, defense attorney Robert Schalk. Tried so many cases before juries across New York. Robert, good to see you as always. I guess the question almost would be, would you rather have been Kyle Rittenhouse's defense attorney, or would you rather be his defamation attorney suing the New York Times and MSNBC and CNN?
Well, I mean, as it stands today, you'd want to be his defamation attorney because there are deep pockets. There is precedent set with Nicholas Sandmann, as you just pointed out, that when you go and defame someone and label someone a white supremacist, or you advertise this type of information, they have to prove 4 things to potentially get a lawsuit. That is, that it's his identification. We know that's Mr. Rittenhouse. They publicized it. Yes, they did. They did so on Twitter and other media outlets. Whose fault is it that it was published? The administration's fault and those media outlets, and was there harm? Now that's going to be the hard part, is proving the harm. But you have, again, Nicholas Sandmann was successful. You have deep pockets on the media front. I don't know whether or not the pockets would be deep enough on the administration's front and where you get with that. But I think, all the outlets that aired that and labeled them white supremacists. Let me ask you a question. If Kyle Rittenhouse was a white supremacist and there was hardcore, God's honest proof that there was evidence of that, don't you think you just would have heard about it in this criminal case?
You definitely would have found out about it. And it was interesting, like if you go back through a number of the tweets from politicians as well, calling him a white supremacist, calling him a murderer, never couching it with alleged or charged with or anything like that. I thought if you accuse somebody of a crime, you say they have committed a crime. Isn't that defamation per se?
I mean, yes. I mean, again, everyone does that in the press these days and in the media these days. There's a rush to judgment. That's why every lawyer who gets in front of a microphone when their client is initially arrested says, do not rush to judgment. Let the facts come out. There is evidence that you're not covering. You're giving this the wrong slant. Everyone rolls their eyes at defense attorneys, but Kyle Rittenhouse's lawyer said, I'm not about causes. I'm about facts. I'm about innocence. And that was proven true today.
Yeah, no, it really was. And actually, I think it was Kyle Rittenhouse's first lawyer who in the very beginning of this said this case should have never been charged. Everybody in the media sort of laughed at him at that point. He turned out perhaps to have been right. Certainly the jury thought he was right. Robert Schalk, as always, we appreciate your insights. Good to see you.
Thanks, Leland.
Yeah, thank you. All right, coming up, following the verdict today, will the left have a social reckoning, or is the narrative going to continue? Plus, the opioid epidemic is not going away, and COVID lockdowns are coming back in Europe. Why those two do not mix well in America when we come back. Welcome back. We'll get back to the Rittenhouse verdict in a few minutes, but this broke late Friday, late this afternoon. The CDC endorsed the use of Moderna and Pfizer's COVID-19 booster shots now for all adults, which of course fully complicates the definition of fully vaccinated. Anthony Fauci was telegraphing that earlier this week. Speaking of fully vaccinated, those who are unvaccinated are now facing punishment in Austria. Without a shot, you can't leave your house except for work, groceries, and exercise. Yes, the police in Austria are enforcing it. We haven't exactly gotten that far here in America yet, but massive mandate disruptions are just around the corner. Starting Monday, federal employees must be vaccinated. So if you're not a federal employee and think that won't affect you, well, if you or your family or friends are traveling this holiday weekend, well, get ready for insane security lines. Some reports show up to 40% of TSA workers are unvaccinated, meaning they could be off the job for the busiest travel day since the pandemic began, quite possibly some of the busiest travel days in history. We're going to, of course, monitor that. New data on the government response to COVID raises some serious questions, especially as it relates to suicides, which did go down during the pandemic. One of the main arguments against the lockdowns was mental health. But with suicides going down, that argument kind of goes bust. Or does it? We now know there were more than 100,000 drug deaths, overdose deaths, in the United States in 1 year, an explosion of overdoses. Drug recovery advocates say the increased isolation among recovering drug users made it harder and harder for them to maintain sobriety. Joining us now, Dr. Leland Vittert, professor of data science at Washington University in St. Louis, feature editors at the Harvard Data Science Review, Mark and Carol Vittert's favorite child. Liberty, we put up the suicide rates down 3% from 2020 versus 2019, men down 2%, women down 9%. What's not to celebrate?
Well, so it's absolutely great that suicide rates are down, but this number is being used to say that COVID lockdowns weren't that bad for people's mental health. But it's ignoring a really important piece of data, which is drug overdose deaths, which aren't included in suicide rates. And those were just released a couple days ago. And it's shown an enormous increase in drug overdose deaths, up 30% in the past 12 months alone. It's an enormous number, and to not correlate drug overdose deaths with mental health during the pandemic and lockdown is nuts. It's absolutely correlated. So you have to look at both of these numbers in order to really understand what's going on.
You also probably have to look at who exactly is dying, because obviously older people died at a much higher rate to COVID than younger people. And then you think about people under the age of, say, 55. Were they more likely to die from suicide or pardon me, were they more likely to die from drug overdoses or from COVID?
So if you're under 55 in the U.S., in the past year, we have seen a significant amount more people die from drug overdose deaths than they did of COVID. So we have what people are calling the opioid epidemic, which would make you think that we would have the same type of response to that as we do to something like the COVID pandemic. But we're doing absolutely nothing in comparison.
When you say absolutely nothing in comparison, we have all these opioids, all this fentanyl that's being trafficked, and we've reported on it coming across the southern border, coming in from China through Mexico, and then smuggled up synthetic fentanyl and the like. What is there to do about it that isn't just arresting people who deal drugs?
Well, so if we look at where these opiates are coming from that result in these drug overdose deaths, almost 80% of it is illegally trafficked fentanyl. What we've been doing most in the past couple years for the opioid epidemic is going after doctors who are prescribing legal opiates. That's not where the drug overdose deaths are coming from. It's coming from the illegal heroin and fentanyl that's being made in China and coming through in our southern border. Almost 3 times the amount that has been seized of illegal fentanyl to the number of opiates that are legally prescribed. And that's just what's been seized. We don't even know how much illegal fentanyl is coming in that isn't being seized. And that's really what we need to be focusing on if we want to battle what we're calling the opioid epidemic.
So this concept that there are pill factory pharmacies or pill clinics where people just go and get these crazy prescriptions, those aren't the ones who are dying from the drug overdoses.
No, the percentage is so much less. We're seeing up to 80% of the deaths coming from this illegal fentanyl, not prescribed legal opiates.
Yeah, and the numbers on the illegal fentanyl coming across, the seizures, as you point out, are going up, which means the stuff that's getting through is going up as well. Liberty, thank you. Have a great weekend. The World Tennis Association is now pulling out of China after a professional tennis player went missing. Will China retaliate? You better believe it. Unless you're a rabid tennis fan, you've never heard of Peng Shuai. She's 35 years old, from China, never won a singles Grand Slam, and is currently ranked 71st in the world. She's now trending on Twitter. Where is Peng Shuai? The Communist Party in Beijing knows exactly where she is. They disappeared her and are holding her incommunicado, if she's even alive, because of social media posts in which she accuses the former vice premier of China, the number 2 in the country, one of the most powerful people in the country, of a forced sexual relationship. She made those comments on Weibo, the Chinese version of Twitter. Chinese version because it's censored by the communist regime, which not only deleted the tweet, but disappeared Peng, literally disappeared her. In the past few days, Chinese state media released screenshots of emails allegedly showing Peng retracting her accusations and saying she's at home resting. If you believe that, you also believe Elvis is alive. Serena Williams, one of the greatest tennis players in history, tweeted, "I'm devastated and shocked to hear about the news of my peer, Peng Shuai. I hope she's safe and found as soon as possible. This must be investigated, and we must not stay silent, sending love to her family during this incredibly difficult time." What's curiously missing from that tweet is the word China. Wonder why? Maybe it's because she's sponsored by Nike, a company accused of using Chinese slave labor to make its goods, and a company that has a history of speaking out on social justice issues, like this ad with Colin Kaepernick. They speak out on social justice issues in the United States, but remain silent about the atrocities committed by the Chinese. That's to protect Nike's supply chain and also the demand for Nike products inside of China. Nike does a lot of business in China. Also silent is LeBron James, King James, who, like his sponsor Nike, loves to tell America what's wrong with the country. You might remember he recently made fun of Kyle Rittenhouse's testimony, calling them crocodile tears. But the king is silent on arguably the worst human genocide since the Holocaust, leaving it to fellow NBA player Enes Kanter to explain. Kanter tweeted a picture of James's new shoe line, writing, "Money over morals for the king. Sad and disgusting how these athletes pretend they care about social justice. They really do shut up and dribble when big boss China says so. Did you," meaning did King James, "educate yourself about the slave labor that made your shoes, or is that not part of your research?" Dean Chang, senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. John Moody, former Rome bureau chief for Time magazine, former Fox News executive and author of the book, Of Course They Knew About China. Gentlemen, good to see both of you. Dean, is China starting to realize that this is going to be a problem, or are they still not caring?
I think the Chinese realize that in the short term it might be a problem, but as with the origins of COVID or the head of Interpol, I think the Chinese believe they can also just brazen it out. That if they just stick to their story, there's nothing to see here, let's move along, let's all make money together, that eventually the West will just tire.
Well, certainly Nike never had tire from anything because they've never said anything. John, if this were a U.S. tennis star accusing an American politician, or even a Chinese tennis star accusing an American politician, it'd be the lead story on every newscast day in, day out. Why the blackout?
It would be wall-to-wall coverage, Leland. I just want to say one thing. Your introduction was, in tennis terms, was an ace. And what China has done is they've hit into a double fault recently. They have messed up with this tennis player, and they are also about to mess up with Kanter, whose criticism of China is absolutely legitimate. It just doesn't suit the Chinese narrative, and so they're probably going to do something crazy about that too.
Yeah, you have to sort of wonder if the Chinese feel cornered, what they might do. It's interesting, in the same way, and we've talked about this before, LeBron James, the NBA was silent. The NBA silenced one of their executives who spoke out about Hong Kong. The Women's Tennis Association, Dean, of all groups, has taken a real stand on this and put their money where their mouth is, threatened to pull out of China. At some point, does China have to change the way they're dealing with this and produce Peng, for lack of a better term?
Certainly we all would hope so. I think that as we head towards the 2022 Olympics, it'll be very interesting to see, then the Winter Olympics will be in Beijing. If athletes start pulling out, if sponsors start pulling out, if they basically say, look, show us Peng where we're not going to be there, that is the kind of pressure that absolutely would turn up the heat in Beijing. But if, most entities are like the NBA, hey, we're in it for the money, it's going to be very, very hard to produce enough pressure on the Chinese.
Yeah, and if you're looking for moral leadership from the White House on this one, take a listen to Jen Psaki about a possible boycott to the Olympics, and you be the judge.
Sir, do you support a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics?
Something we're considering.
We have serious concerns about the human rights abuses we've seen in Xinjiang, and certainly there are a range of factors as we look at what our presence would be.
John, can you think of anything less meaningful than a diplomatic boycott?
The term word candy comes to mind, Leland. You know, not sending your diplomats to their ringside seats at the Olympics is a pretty tough shot at China. Boy, I'll tell you, I bet you they just reel back and say, whatever you'd like, Mr. Biden. No, I mean, it's mouth candy. It means nothing. And, you know, if they do that kind of a boycott, it'll be even less meaningful than if they were to just say, okay, you're a criminal regime, you're doing things to your people that you shouldn't be doing, and we won't put up with it any longer.
Yeah, you'd think at some point perhaps the White House would take a stand, but obviously they have their priorities, and we heard about that even from John Kerry saying climate is the priority. Dean, this is the other side of this, and there's a real issue here because China has disappeared this woman who's an international celebrity. Tom Cotton tweeted, if the Chinese communists disappear their own athletes, just think how much less they'll care for the safety of ours during the Olympics. Is this concept of disappearing people inside China who speak out against the regime going to translate to disappearing Americans and others who speak out against China if the Chinese aren't paying a price for this?
The Chinese arrested a Swedish Chinese citizen from a train in front of two Swedish diplomats. This is a person who was a bookseller from Hong Kong whose store was selling books that are banned in China but were legal in Hong Kong. The Chinese have made very clear, if you support Hong Kong independence, Taiwan independence, anywhere in the world, you are liable if you go to China to be arrested. So I would not want to be Mr. Cantor, for example, and go to China, because whether he'd be disappeared or not is one thing. Whether he'd be arrested is a lot less of a question.
Yeah, you also have to think about whether Mr. Cantor traveling in places other than the United States might get a visit from Chinese diplomats. John, Dean, always great to see you. Thanks for the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, our final thoughts on the Rittenhouse trial. What does the not guilty verdict mean for the left's narrative? Will Rittenhouse ever get an apology?
Is the president going to stop saying that the Build Back Better plan does not increase the deficit 1 single cent if we now know that that is not true?
It is true, and I would note the several economists and experts out there. I think you're probably talking about the CBO score.
Yeah, he was talking about the CBO score. That's Jen Psaki today at the White House defending the president's Build Back Better plan, saying that we should all ignore the Congressional Budget Office, which says Mr. Biden's $1.75 trillion plan would significantly raise the deficit. In fact, Mr. Biden says we should all listen to the CBO. Oh, here's the tweet. This was video that we had. According to the most recent CBO report, if you notice, the only thing Democrats and Republicans agree on is the objectivity of CBO. We all quote their numbers. We quote them even when they don't agree with what we want, because it is what they do, because they are bipartisan. There was video of President Biden saying that. It appears the White House doesn't feel that way anymore. The Build Back Better plan passed the House this morning and now heads to the Senate, where President Biden must twist the arms of Senator Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema if it's going to get passed. Twisting arms requires political capital, something the president has precious little of right now. Niall Stanage, White House columnist for our partners at The Hill, has been reporting on that and joins us now. It doesn't seem like they're popping the champagne bottles at the White House.
Well, I mean, I think that they are reluctant to do so before this bill gets through the Senate. Obviously, the actual passage in the House was a success for President Biden. I mean, that is what he has wanted. It has been a slow process. It's been an agonizing process. It has exposed Democratic divisions. But they do have the big bill passed by the House. So they're happy about that, even though they're not, as you put it, popping the champagne bottles quite yet.
You put up what's in the Build Back Better plan, and you've got some stuff that Democrats are pretty much aligned on here. And then you've got some things that they're really not. Universal pre-K aligned on $500 billion to fight climate change, 4 weeks paid leave, more money for Obamacare, fill the Medicaid coverage gap, negotiating drug prices is Bernie Sanders thing. But then you've got like raising the deduction for local and state taxes. That is a huge sticking point with the likes of Bernie Sanders and others. 15% minimum tax on the corporations. That's a big question for Kristen Sinema. Joe Manchin has his own things that he worries about. It feels like this is far from a done deal.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Leland. I mean, those two senators, Sinema and Manchin, exert enormous influence on this because, of course, Democrats have a de facto majority of 1 only because Vice President Harris holds the deciding vote in the Senate. They're not going to get any Republican support. It's going to be 0 Republican votes. So therefore, they need to hold every Democratic senator in line. It's still not clear that they're going to be able to do that. And of course, Senator Manchin has just raised issues in the past couple of days about the possible consequences for inflation of all of this. So it's not a done deal.
Yeah, then you think about, typically you'd have a president in a White House legislative office that really has got some horsepower behind it to twist arms with Manchin and Sinema. Look at the Real Clear Politics average for President Biden. It is in an all-time low. Right now, 53.5% disapprove, 41.5 or 41.3 approve. Does the White House have a plan of how to twist arms and flex political muscle when they seem to be in such a weak position?
You know, I think the basic idea is to use that weakness as a strength, if that doesn't sound too ridiculous. I think the idea is to say, we're in a fix here. The president's approval ratings are down to this level. We need to show that we can do stuff. We need to deliver for the voters who voted for President Biden in the first place. And this is the way to do that. Whether that argument actually carries the day is a different matter.
Well, it did certainly light a fire to get the bipartisan infrastructure bill passed in the House. Niall, great analysis as always. We'll be looking at your columns in The Hill. Talk to you soon. Back now to our top story. The Kyle Rittenhouse murder trial has impacted far more than those who we saw in court. Back in April, a Norfolk, Virginia police officer was fired for donating $25 to Rittenhouse's defense. So will he get his job back now? Maybe an apology. Other donors to Rittenhouse's causes were harassed. Some were doxxed with their personal information put on the internet. GoFundMe shut down a donation page for Kyle Rittenhouse, saying it has the ability to yank certain causes it deems unacceptable. And after the incident, Facebook reportedly banned any praise in support of Rittenhouse, including sharing links to his legal aid funds. Let's bring in Tony Katz, radio show host, Jason Nichols, senior lecturer at the University of Maryland. Gentlemen, good to see both of you. Tony, you think the phone's going to be ringing for all these folks with apologies?
Oh, gosh, no. Apologies are not given when narrative is upheld. And that's so much of the story here. When you go back to that GoFundMe story about how they wouldn't allow a GoFundMe for Kyle Rittenhouse because they can make this decision, what are they actually making a decision on? They're making a decision that they didn't want to take the heat for being a place that could allow someone like Kyle Rittenhouse to raise dollars for a legal defense fund. That is to presuppose the level of guilt, or really to demand the level of guilt, because others who apply the pressure in a very violent way want to decide that to be. One of the things that's the fallout from this case is watching the amount of people who said justice be damned. It's not that they think justice was damned because of this decision, the not guilty on all counts, but rather the idea that there was a trial to begin with, as opposed to Representative Hakeem Jeffries, who said lock him up and throw away the key of Kyle Rittenhouse. They didn't want the trial.
Yeah, no. There was a lot of people who prejudged this, a lot of people in the media. And Jason, I'm glad you brought up Hakeem Jeffries, because it seems as though congressmen on the left and the right have taken this to a new level of absurdity. 3 House Republicans, Jason, have already said they want Kyle Rittenhouse to be their intern. Matt Gaetz, Gosar, and Madison Cawthorn. I think we can all agree that justice was done here. The jury has spoken. But what do you make of the right making Kyle Rittenhouse a folk hero?
I think it's kind of absurd. I think it also emboldens a lot of vigilantism that could come in the future. You know, you could see a lot of provocation. You could see people breaking curfew and carrying their weapons
I don't know where, when you say breaking curfew, I don't know where there's any curfews right now in America.
Yeah, so, well, there have been curfews, and certainly when there's rioting and some sort of uprising, usually there's a curfew. So when there is, you're going to see people coming through and carrying their weapons and escalating situations and then claiming self-defense. I think that makes us all a whole lot less safe. And then you see them being rewarded for that kind of behavior. And I'll be clear, I don't necessarily blame Rittenhouse for what occurred. I blame his mother for carrying him there with a weapon. I think that also his companions for abandoning him and leaving a 17-year-old boy by himself.
Yeah, no, David French made this great point in that, you know, you can agree that he's not guilty and also agree he's not a hero. Jason, we're going to get back to Tony in a second, but I did want to get your thought. Chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee sent out a message, also a Democratic congressman. It's disgusting and disturbing that someone was able to carry a loaded assault rifle into a protest against the unjust killing of Jacob Blake, an unarmed black man. There's only two problems with that statement. Jacob Blake is not dead. He's still alive. And he was not unarmed. And I guess the question, Jason, is why this rush by Democrats to all of a sudden try to fundraise and turn Kyle Rittenhouse into the boogeyman?
Well, again, I think what you said earlier was correct. The fact that on both sides, there's been some levels of absurdity. There have been people who don't even have necessarily the relevant facts correctly. So I think that both sides have made mistakes. I don't know anybody who would take someone like Matt Gaetz seriously at this point. And he has his own legal troubles to worry about.
Yeah, no, it was, you just couldn't make up. Paul Gosar saying he's going to arm wrestle Matt Gaetz. And we should point out that the DCCC did correct their statement. At one point, Tony, I'll let you get the last word here. We're all talking about what this means. What does it do? What's going to happen next? By Monday morning, is Kyle Rittenhouse going to just be vanquished to history and we'll be on to be outraged about something else?
No. I think Kyle Rittenhouse knows that his life is in danger all the time. And let's just take a step back for a second. Kyle Rittenhouse did not bring a gun with him across state lines. This is a lie that Representative Gerald Nadler has put out, other Democrats have put out. That didn't happen. This is what happens when people don't look at the case and just follow a narrative, which is so much of the story here. And the idea that we're even talking about Matt Gaetz is not the story. That's wonderful distraction. The story here is that we have a jury of 12 people who deliberated for 4 days and 26 hours, and they are being discounted and disrespected by leadership in America.
Well, okay. I understand the end of your point. Gents, we got to go. We appreciate it. Great conversation to end the Friday night on. Lots to think about over the weekend. Prime's next. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.